First thing you have to do to be able to solve a problem using the Pythagorean theorem is recognize a couple things. First of all, you have to have a right triangle. Is this a right triangle according to the diagram? Yeah, absolutely. It's labeled right there, right angle. We have a right triangle. So we can use the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The next thing that you need to be able to do is label which piece is A, which is B, and which is C. And we've already mentioned once before, the only one that actually matters is C. So the question here is which side is C? That is the only part you have to be very, very sure about. We said earlier that C is always the hypotenuse. We said that that means that C is always the longest side. And we said that C is always across from the right angle. So putting all that information together, the longest side across from the right angle would be right here. So this is going to be C. Even though this triangle has been tilted so that C is on the bottom, we still have to follow all those rules. It's the longest side, it's across from the right angle, so the thing we are solving for here in this problem is C. It does not matter which one you label as A or B. It makes absolutely no difference because when we have A and B, we're going to add them. And in addition, it does not matter what order you do them in. So I'm just going to say that 14 is A. I'm going to say that 12 is B. You could do it the other way around and you would get the same thing. So now we're going to plug these numbers in, and this is where I need you paying close attention to how we actually solve this. If I plug these numbers in, A is 14, so I have 14 squared plus B is 12, 12 squared equals, we don't know what C is, so it's still going to say C squared. 14 squared, 14 times 14. This is one of the numbers that I had you put in your list last week when we were simplifying square roots. It's going to be 196. 12 times 12, we should all already know, is 144. And then we will find C squared afterwards. So at this point, the formula asks us to add these two numbers together. So we're going to add 196 and 144 together. And get 340. Now, the end of this problem is something that a lot of people tend to make mistakes with, so this is where I want you paying very close attention. The first mistake, and there's a variety of very common mistakes. Mistake number one is that people will say, that's it, the end, I got it. That's what C is. C is 340. That can't be true. You're telling me that in this triangle, one side is 14, one side is 12, and then the last side is 340? No. There's no way that that works. So this clearly should not be a correct answer if you consider that this is part of a triangle. So there is something else I have to do to this number 340 before we are going to be done with this problem. The next common mistake is to say that we're going to divide by 2, because you see a little 2 here. We are definitely not dividing by 2. It's not 2 times C, it's C squared. So who does remember? What am I supposed to do to get rid of squared? There is something that gets rid of this exponent. David? Square root. So the opposite of taking the square of something is to take the square root of something. Square root cancels squared entirely. This is an equation, so we have to do the same thing on the other side. Now here's where we run into a bit of a problem. 340 is a larger number than we are used to, which means we're going to have to do a little bit of extra work here. First thing we would want to do is find out if 340 has a square root. So you would try different numbers. We know that 15 times 15 is 225, so it has to be bigger than that. But it ends in a 0. The only way you get an answer that ends in 0 doing something times itself is if you had 10 times 10. And that's not 10 times 10. So this number does not have its own square root. What we have to do now is take this number, the square root of 340, and we need to try to break it down. Now this one can be broken down. I'm going to guarantee you that to begin with. The question for us is what number is going to fit. So this takes us back to what we were doing at the beginning of the period when we were simplifying square roots. So taking a look at all the different square numbers that we could have, we need to find one that goes into 340 evenly. Whether it's 2 times or 3 times, it doesn't matter how many times it goes in, but we need to find one of these square numbers that actually fits into our number here, 340. So looking through this, 225 is small enough to fit in, but we can't do it twice. It's too big to fit twice, so that one's out. 196, that fits in, but it's also too big for us to fit it in twice. That's not going to work. 169. Well, if we did that twice, we would get 338. Almost worked perfect, but not quite. So down to 144. Fit it twice, you get 288. That doesn't leave us enough room for another one. We're going to keep working our way down the list. Some people work their way up the list. It does not matter which way you go. But eventually, we're going to try to find that 340 divided by 4 gives us 4 times 85. So in this example, unfortunately, the one that works the best is starting at the very beginning. So this is where things are going to become a little bit more challenging for people. Should I start at the end and try to work my way back? Should I start at the beginning and try to work my way up? Usually, if you've gone through a few from the back and it's still not working, I would say work your way up instead. Now that we've done this, we would say the square root of 4 is 2. We have an 85 left here. Now, if 85 could be split further, we would, but the only way we can split 85 here in a useful way is 17 times 5. Those are not in our list. This becomes our final answer. So as you go through this whole process, you plug the numbers in for A and B, square each one of them, add them up. Whatever that number is, you take the square root. If this number, and it didn't, 340, if it does not have a square root, you have to break it down. We end up with 2 times the square root of 85.